Welcome to Ready, Set, Grow. This is session 10, and we will be back in 5 minutes. So you've got about 5 minutes to get yourself set up, get your coffee if you have coffee, water, and just get yourself ready. So we will be back in about 5 minutes. We'll see you then. Well, welcome back. It's time for us to get started on session number 10, which is going to be talking about do a little to get a lot. This is one of my favorite topics, and I'm going to review some ideas with you and share stories. I'm going to do more stories because a lot of the information we have already talked about. And as I said in the past, this is really a building process. So I look at it as a way that we can continue and build on what we have talked about and learned in the past. Our agenda, I will get back to my screen share, and well, I don't know if we really need to have our agenda because it's the same all the time. We're going to do our kinesiology. We're going to talk about where we're at and starting small to grow big, or do a little to get a lot. There's 3 principles I will share with you. There's actually 7, and we will talk about 3 of those. We're going to talk about the 1% change. I have an example on a 10% change, which is really to illustrate if we just get started, we're going to have some impact, and then we will wrap up. As usual, we are going to start off with our kinesiology. So as you are able, please stand, and we will do, wheel just came off my chair. I guess we'll see how that goes. So as you are able, touch your elbow to your opposite knee. We'll just do a few of those. And if this is not comfortable for you, you can do it sitting in your chair and just touch the knee with your hand from a sitting position or a standing position. All right, so we've got enough of those. Next thing, I'm sorry about this chair deal. Put your hands together, do a figure 8. Do 3 or 4 of those. Then the last one that gets to be confusing, put the backs of your hands together, link your fingers, go through. We do 3 of these, go through, link those fingers, and pull through. And again, you know by now why we do this, because we are looking to connect both hemispheres of our brain and actually get our brain activated. I don't know if I told you before, if you're interested in doing something a little different, you can take your pen and draw figure 8s on a piece of paper, then switch hands and do figure 8s. I like doing the movement exercises because frankly, they're easier for me. And I think it's a great idea to get up and move. As we continue on, I'm going to get back to our screen sharing and be ready to take notes in whatever vehicle you have, a notebook, index cards. You know by now that's I like the index cards. I also take things in my notebook, so do whatever works for you. Then if you're using a mind map, here's our basic mind map that is for mind mapping on a personal level. Same concept, put your ID in the middle and all the other pieces go around the outside. If that works for you, do that. Our process is, again, looking at 3 main things. Get ready, do all those somewhat background pieces, get set, start putting those pieces together, and then grow. And we are in our 3rd pillar. We are on session 10, and that is do a little to get a lot. Like I said, this is one of the topics I really, really like. And before I do that, I'm just going to tell you a little story. A number of years ago, I was recruited by a finance company from California to start the Midwest operations. And this was a kind of financing that nobody did around the Midwest, and people were really not familiar with it. As you may know, I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and there was some of this done out of Chicago, but very limited because we didn't have the traditional industries where this was used. So I started that operation, and it was just me, and we didn't even have any office furniture. So the first day I sat on the floor with the phone and started making phone calls. I believe I knew 1 banker at that point. I'm not sure if I knew any, but if I did, it would have been 1. And I put together my plan and I just started calling. So I took it 1 step at a time, got on the phone, called. And I was calling people that I had identified in my plan, or the industry categories that was in my plan. And I just started working on it. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we're wrapping up. And here's another story I love to use to get started in this topic. And this is a woman named Marth Berry. And in the 1890s, she did something unusual. What wasn't so unusual is that she loved to ride horseback with her dad. And so after church, they would go out riding and they would kind of survey their property and look and see how everybody was doing and really just have some time together. Well, one particular day, they were out riding, and here were 3 children at the edge of the property. And so she just started to talk to them, who are you? Where do you live? And she said that they had just come from church and asked if these children went to church, and they said no, and they didn't. She asked them if they knew the Bible stories, and they said no, we don't know any of those stories. So she decided she was going to teach them some of these stories, and that's the way it started. She told them, after she had mesmerized them with the stories, she said, bring your siblings, your brothers and sisters next time. They did. And then it was bring your friends. Pretty soon she was teaching school in a little cabin, kind of a playhouse cabin on their property. And she started teaching children. She was rather industrious, and she raised a garden. And then she sold the produce from the garden to raise money to buy supplies for the children's schooling. You might wonder, well, what is this school about? At that point, people that were tenant farmers and had less income and were kind of on the economically challenged scale didn't have access to schools. And that's why she decided she was going to teach them, which she did. And she kept doing this, and would then sell her produce and keep some seeds and grow the garden again, sell, and so on. At one time, she had an opportunity to meet Henry Ford, and she told him about her school, and she asked him if he would make a donation. So he gave her a dime. You see that on the PowerPoint here, a dime. And this was in, the 1890s or so. And I did do a little research and did some calculations, and that would amount to about $360 in today's money. Still, if you're starting a school, $360 is nothing. And at that point, a dime was pretty minuscule. She kept doing this and growing and growing. She basically grew the college, and it has become the largest contiguous campus in the world. She had some particular areas of expertise in agronomy, as one area anyway, that became the model for education in other schools around the world. And she also was given 8 honorary degrees from different colleges and universities, and she never attended college. She was able to accomplish a lot, and she started very small, teaching those 3 children some Bible stories, and grew from there to, as I have mentioned and you see on the screen, become the largest contiguous campus in the world. Not too bad for somebody who started just telling stories to 3 children. Let's move on. There's 3 principles that I'd like to share, and there are 7 if we were doing a full series here. And I know last time we talked about upselling and cross-selling, and there was a lot of information, from some background information to training to challenges and obstacles that you face in selling. So here we're going to talk about some principles, and I'm going to share a little bit more of stories and examples with you in this session. The first thing is, as you can see on the left, the idea is the principle of focus, and it's absolutely essential to have focus. We know that from things we've talked about in the past, and we just know that from any business experience we have in our personal life. And I've got 3 points underneath that I want to share. The first is vision. We need to have a clear vision for what we're trying to accomplish, how we're going to increase the revenue in our business, how we want to grow it. Again, this is an area that we've talked about, so I think you probably have some ideas, or maybe have your vision already put together. At least I hope you have. And I wanted to share a little bit of a story about a company called Spanx. And if you're female, you definitely know what Spanx are. And if you're a guy, you might not know. And Spanx is basically an undergarment that's sort of a modern version of the old girdle that people used to wear. And this was started by Sarah Blakely, and she had $5,000 in savings, and she started this company, and she kept working and working to create a product that she could wear underneath some white slacks. And she grew up in the South, and white slacks were a lot more common maybe than other parts of the country. And she said, there's nothing out there, and took it on to create something. She kept working, and she finally came up with an idea for her prototype, and then she patented the idea. Well, that didn't stop there, of course, because then she had to sell her product. So she was calling on retail stores, and I believe this was in Dallas, and she was calling on retail stores, one after another, turned her down, turned her down, turned her down. She was then on a sales call at Neiman Marcus and just was not going to give up. And she knew the buyer in this particular situation was about ready to tell her to leave. And she convinced that buyer, a woman, to go with her to the ladies' room. And Sarah put on one of her products and showed the woman just how effective it was at smoothing out the body and being able to be something that could be worn under white slacks. The woman at Neiman Marcus placed an order. And right around that time, she was also pursuing QVC, the online shopping channel. And this was definitely a hit. She managed to sell 8,000 units in just under 6 minutes. The other thing I like about her story is her clarity of vision and how she really stands out. She sold the company for about $1 billion. And once that was completed, she wanted to share her good fortune with her team. And she gave every employee 2 first-class tickets, round-trip tickets, and airplane tickets, and $10,000 each, because she wanted them to share in her success. So that's the story about vision and Sarah Blakely of Spanx. Another part of focus is to differentiate. And we've talked about this before. You really want to have your unique aspect. How are you different from the competition? How do you stand out? What can you do that makes you different and clear in the customer's mind? A key piece. Well, you might know of a company named Airbnb. And do you know how they got started? Well, there were 3 guys in San Francisco, and they knew that there were a lot of conferences or big meetings, trade shows, and so on. And they figured out that there were some challenges getting accommodations. And at least for some people who didn't want to spend the regular pricey hotel rates, they knew there might be an opportunity. So the first thing they did was they offered the opportunity to stay in their apartment and sleep on an air mattress. Yep, air mattresses. That's how Airbnb started, which maybe that's where the word air of the Airbnb came from. And this turned out to be a big success. They expanded, they started offering apartments, and they got people to offer their homes or part of their homes. And it grew and grew, as you know. And they also have been very good in differentiating. Well, obviously, they were the first ones in the marketplace to do this. And then you probably are aware that they also have guests provide reviews and ratings after they have stayed in whatever the particular accommodation is. And this helps Airbnb further differentiate and be unique, because now they have that additional data, which made them different. And then they could continue to make improvements and really reference those high quality listings that they were getting. The third idea under focus is customer service. And as we know, because we've talked about this, and customer experience and customer journey is absolutely essential when we focus. And maybe that one thing that sets us apart is our outstanding customer service. I wanted to share with you a little bit about Zappos, which is a shoe company. This came about very much like Spanx and Airbnb, where the founder of Zappos was looking for some shoes. I believe he was going to a wedding. Anyway, he said, there's nobody that sells the kind of shoes I want. So there he goes. And he comes up with the online shoe company. And some of the things that are really different about that, so this is differentiation and customer service, is that they have a priority of making sure people are satisfied. So customer satisfaction is a key area that they focus on. You could say that might be their one big idea. And they have a 365-day return policy, and customers can return products within a year with no questions asked. And they have also exceptional phone support. Well, one of the things that Zappos is known for is their customer service. And there's stories, tons of stories about what a good job that they do. And one of the really remarkable stories is where a customer called and said that her mother had passed away and she needed to return the shoes. And so the customer service person not only expressed her sympathy and condolences for the customer's loss, she said, hey, you know what, to make this easier, I'm going to waive the shipping fees, the return shipping fees. And even more so, she sent a courier to pick up those shoes at the woman's house. It's stories like this that permeate and create that customer service legend that Zappos has. And this permeates their culture. I wanted to next move into getting data. And as so many things we've talked about, we really need to have good data. We need to see what's working, what's not working. And utmost importance is to make sure we're getting information from the customer, getting some good customer feedback. Now I'm looking for my notes so I don't leave anything out. One of the companies I want to talk about here that is exemplary in getting good customer feedback is Tesla. And they do a few different things. One is they have a social media presence. So they really do a lot of things, including the founder and president, Elon Musk, which most people know that name. He is on Twitter, and he personally often responds to customers' inquiries, to their suggestions, and responds to their comments, complaints, things like that. So Tesla uses online communication to provide feedback directly to them, and people then receive a timely response. They also at Tesla have online forums and communities, and they dedicated a whole community called the Tesla Motor Club, where owners and enthusiasts can discuss their experiences, they can share feedback, and they can offer suggestions to the company about things that they could do different. And Tesla people, Tesla employees, monitor these forums, and company representatives often participate in the discussions and respond or engage and talk to the customers that are providing these insights and opinions. A third thing that Tesla does is they do software updates and feature requests. And this is often done in particularly software companies, and not that unusual in other tech companies where there's product updates often and software updates that Tesla is known for letting people know what's coming and when it will be available and how it will affect the customer, that particular vehicle, if it's something that is going to be available in each vehicle, that kind of thing. A fourth thing that Tesla does and does well is customer support and service centers. So they have places where people can go and ask questions about the customer. And again, they put a strong emphasis on customer support within their service centers. And people can reach out to the team, the Tesla team, via phone, email, or a mobile app. So Tesla has put together various options to try to accommodate the different ways that people want to be in touch. A fifth thing that Tesla does, again, we're still talking about customer feedback and how they keep that information flow going, is a customer referral program. Of course, this is kind of a nice deal. And they provide incentives to owners of Tesla cars to share their experiences and refer new customers. I don't think there's any other car company that does that. I could be wrong, then you could let me know. So this program rewards Tesla owners with benefits such as vehicle upgrades. They might get some additional incentives when the referral that they've made makes a purchase. And again, what does this do? This encourages customers to advocate for Tesla and provides the company with valuable word of mouth feedback and recommendations, all part of what they do in their process of having good customer feedback. Next, I wanted to share the second point, which is gathering information. And as always, we want to do everything we can to find out, what does our customer need? How are they doing? How have their needs changed? How are they doing with our product? That kind of thing. And my example here is a company called Chopper Mill. And a couple ideas or some points I want to share with you. This is a Minnesota company started by a woman, by a mom, and she came up with an idea to manufacture mittens, and she wanted a really high quality mittens. And if you have children or ever did, there's one thing that typically happens almost as soon as you buy mittens, and that's that somebody loses a mitten. Her company is different, and it's like I think I mentioned, it's Chopper Mill, and she allows people to get one free replacement mitten. So let's say you bought a pair of mittens and one mitten got lost. You can get in touch and get a free replacement mitten. And these mittens are not inexpensive. So the fact that you get one replaced for free is kind of a nice deal. And it's the only company I know of that does that. If your child loses more than one, then you will have to buy it. But the nice thing is you can buy just one mitten. You can buy right hand or left hand. And she really learned by observing in her own personal experience that that lost mitten was a real pain, a real life experience for most people. These mittens are such good quality that you can actually hand them down. And another thing, well, as I said, they're durable, they have bigger cuffs, they have a leather patch that you can get the child's name put on, all kinds of things that make them stand out. The company also sells a book called The Mitten Thief, and this was written by the founder of the company. And that's pretty much what I have for you on that one. The other point here, you can see when we're talking about data, it's all about talking to the customer, isn't it? And really being on top of what's going on, what's working, what's not working. And it's just so important, as you know, I kind of get carried away with this, that we really have good information from our customers. So third point is customer experience or customer journey. And we talked about that a lot when we were talking about upselling and cross-selling. And frankly, I think we talked about it even in session, maybe it was 5 and 6. A really good company here, that is my example for the customer experience, is HubSpot. And you might know about HubSpot. They are an online company that does CRM, and they are really known for their extensive collection of educational resources. So not only do they provide the software, the service, they also educate people. They've got blogs, they've got webinars, they even have certification programs, and they provide valuable insights and best practices on inbound marketing, on sales, customer service. Those areas that they do a good job on, they also educate people and this improves their overall customer experience. Another thing that HubSpot does and does well is they have personalized onboarding. Remember last time we were talking about personalization when you're looking at upselling and cross-selling? Well, they do personalized onboarding. And as we talked about upselling or cross-selling, we know how important it is to have it personalized, because then your customer says, oh, you're talking to me. This is exactly what I need. Well, when you can personalize your onboarding, you are now tailoring your whole approach to get your customer using your product and using it more effectively. So that's a smooth transition for the customer to begin using the HubSpot products and services. The third thing that HubSpot does well is their responsive customer support. Again, all of this is enhancing the customer experience and customer journey. And HubSpot's customer success team or support team is known for its responsiveness and helpfulness. They offer assistance through various channels, and some of those include the phone, email, live chat, all those different ways that people are probably having their own preference on how they get some help. And their support reps at HubSpot are trained to address customer questions and queries and concerns promptly, and ensuring a positive customer experience. So again, this is back to customer experience. Let's move on to the third pillar over here on the right, and that is the topic of continuous improvement. The first thing that you want to do is identify areas for improvement. We've talked about enough things now that you know what you want to do is really look at what are you doing, what's working, what's not working. You hopefully have some customer interviews done, some customer research done, and have identified some things that maybe your company could do better. Well, I've got a story for you. This is pretty dramatic, and it's Continental Airlines, and this goes back quite a ways back into the 90s. So they got some customer input and customer service information from their internal team. And what they found out, this is both internal and done by external agencies, because there are people that do that in the industry for airlines. They basically, Continental Airline at this point, they had a new CEO in 1994. They were dead last on on-time delivery or on-time flights, and they lost $600 million. This was 1994. And they decided that they needed to listen to the customers. And a key point is you need to listen to your customers, even if the competition isn't. And in fact, if you listen to the customers and your competition isn't, you will be way ahead. Of course, you do need to do something with the information that you collect. And they focused on the customer focus, process improvement, and incremental changes. And they were doing one thing, as we said, do a little to get a lot. They came out with a mandate. Basically, the president of the company, who was new, basically said, everybody's going to focus on on-time flights. Everybody in the company. So suggestion boxes, meetings, any way that they could do it. Every single person in the company was focused on ideas to improve their on-time performance. And in 1 year, they went from losing $600 million to making $225 million. Now, if you're a small company, these sound like big numbers. Well, just lop off a 0 or 2. And you could use those as a comparison. They went from being the worst at on-time flights to being number 1. Also, in the ideas of continuous improvement is the idea of making a plan and tracking results. And as you probably know, I'm big at planning, and that's the main thing I do is work with companies that need to figure out how to increase revenue and profits. And we do that once we do all the background work. We put together the plan and then execute it. So that is kind of my claim to fame. It's what I love doing. Anyway, we're going to go back to a little bit of information here. And if you think about Continental Airline again, they made a plan. They had their goal, and they knew that they were going to run out of cash if they didn't do something. This is pretty serious, and that might be quite the motivation. And they then looked at their operations and identified that key area that they were going to work on. One of the turnarounds that I did was a tool company, and we really looked at it in a similar fashion. We had the venture capital people hire us to turn this company around, and they said, basically, we want you to turn it around or we're going to shut it down. And the decision was we would turn it around. And we, again, had a plan where the CEO focused on operations and production, although that side of things. We had an expert that worked payables and got all our payables knocked down so that we owed less money to our vendors. And I worked on revenue, fixing the customer issues, finding out what they were, looking at all the different parts of our marketing and sales strategies and what was working and not, and we put together a plan. Well, that worked really, really well. And we identified what we needed to do, laid out that plan, and we took it from negative to positive EBITDA in 6 to 9 months. And we went from 1.8 million in revenue. So that's maybe a little bit more in your size. And we took it from 1.8 million. And 18 months later, we had it at 4 million. The other part of that story is the third point here on tracking results. And we got together in the tool company, and we didn't talk every day, the senior team. We didn't talk every day. It was probably every 2 days. And we would come in and we would report on our progress. So the president would say, here's what's going on with production and operations and supply chain and, da, 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 da. I would talk about, here's what we know about the customers. Here's what we're working on. And our payable guy would come in and be so thrilled that he got another vendor to accept less money. He was truly amazing. And it is important to track our results. If we're going to do one thing and start making that improvement, of course, we want to look at it and see, are we getting there? Are we accomplishing our goals? Are we making progress? What are we accomplishing here? And those are the 3 main things. Focus, look at your vision, differentiation, customer service, get data. Again, use the information you have. If it's on paper, fine. If you need to go through some records and write it down, fine. Get some customer interviews done. Do whatever you can to get that data and keep that information flowing with your customer feedback, information, and customer experience and journey. And then continuous improvement. Identify those areas or one area that you can improve. Put together a plan and then track your results and see how you're doing. What I would say is pick one thing that you can work on. And you might say, hey, we already got vision, differentiation, customer service done. Okay, fine. Where is there another opportunity? What's one thing that you can improve on? And of course, we're doing all of this because we are interested in growing the revenue in our company. And of course, to grow that revenue, we have to make sure what we're doing is solving a customer problem and doing it as best as we can. Here's an idea that I got from a man named Jeff Redman. I've kind of come up with my own version of it. The whole idea of changing 1% to get 19% comes from Jeff. So take a look at the things here in the table. One thing you can do is increase your sales. And you can see the example that I'm using there is where we originally had 1 million in sales and we increased it 1%. So we increased it $10,000. And doesn't mean we just increase everything. So another area is we decreased rent. So we took that down 1%. That saved us $4,000, put us ahead $4,000. We also decreased our energy use in this example by 1%. That took us down or gave us an additional $5,000 that we were otherwise spending. So this all totaled to a 19% increase, or in this particular example, again, change the numbers, take out some zeros or whatever. But anyway, in this example, where we had 1 million in sales and revenue, this gave us an additional $19,000. And when you can do that, when you can take one thing and work on it, or 1% here, we did a couple different things, you can make a significant change in your business. My colleague was working in Arizona, and she actually at this point worked for the state of Arizona and worked for the governor. And she was always looking at things that could be done better, just her nature. And she was in charge of character education for the state. Well, she went to the governor and she said, I've been thinking about things that we can do to improve the performance of the state and reduce some of our expenses. And she suggested to the governor that what would be done would be to have everybody turn off their computers at the end of the day. Now, I don't recall how much that saved on the state budget. And yet most of us would think, well, that's a pretty simple idea. Yeah, we could do that. How come somebody else didn't think of that? So keep in mind that it doesn't have to be a big deal, and you don't have to change everything. You can start with one thing and have some pretty significant impact. I told you the stories of Spanx and Airbnb and Tesla and HubSpot, Continental Airlines, the company that I turned around. It really doesn't matter where we are and what we're doing if we just can identify one thing to work on. that will make a big difference. Now, one area within the sales side, because a lot of times we are looking at what can we do to increase our revenue. The way I work is we look at that as overall a marketing issue, and we want to have clarity on our target market, know what we're doing, how we're differentiating, how we're positioning ourselves, things that we've talked about. And then it comes down to a lot of implementation, and that's in the sales side. Of course, there's other implementation, like whatever might need to be done in communications to our customers. Maybe we need to do something with our website. Maybe there's some other things in the digital media space that we need to do. And ultimately, usually, there's some work that needs to be done on the sales side. And there's really about 4 things that we can do to get our sales up. And that is in the areas of leads and transactions, sales, and sales side. So what we want to do here, I used an example of 10%. If we can increase our customers, our leads by 10%, we go from, let's just use simple numbers. So let's say that we had 1,000 leads. If we increase that 10%, we now have 1,100 leads to work with. If we have 1,000 current customers and we can increase that 10%, that's 1,100. If we have 2 transactions per customer and we can increase that, looks like a little number there, 2.2, right? And if we can take the average sale of $100 and increase that 10%, now I would guess most of you out there have average sales that are much bigger than $100. For our example, that's what we're going to use. So you take it from $100, add 10%, you got $110. And by doing this, this had a revenue of $100,000, and it actually increased 167% to $266,200. Again, take a look at this. And if we do something like, you might say 10%, that's easy. You go back to the previous example and do 1%. Let's just say, gosh, 1%'s not that big of a deal. I can do 10%. You might feel like you can do 20. Anyway, let's look at this and say, if you did that 10% change and were able to get 10% more leads, 10% more current customers, if you could get them buying 10% more product, and again, they have to need it. It has to make business sense. But a lot of times we don't even explore those opportunities, as crazy as that sounds. Let's say we could increase the average sale. And bottom line, you can look at that. The profit margin went from 25% with a 10% increase, went to 27.5. And you go, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Well, at least it's moving in the right direction, because sometimes when we try to increase our revenue, we just chase dollars and we don't really get quality customers and quality sales. So take a look at this. And the net profit went from 25,000 to 73,000. Yeah, add zeros or take them away, depending on the size of your business. Keep in mind, it doesn't take a revolutionary change in your business. You don't need to fix everything. And maybe, obviously, not everything needs to be fixed. Find that one thing that you can work on. There's some other success stories. Maybe I'll touch on them. It looks like we have time for that. So Spanx, as you see here on my timeline, started with $5,000 and sold a line of undergarments, and then ended up selling the company. Down below, Lucy and Company. This was actually a company started by a guy where he was posting pictures of their dog. And everybody loves dog and cat pictures, especially dogs. Dogs are the most popular pet in the United States. And they then had 1 million followers. I think he had at least 1 million followers of his Instagram, I believe it was. And so he and his wife decided that they were going to offer some products for dogs. So they came up with clever, unusual products, or at least unusual designs. So the dog collar that was different than the other dog collars, the little scarves and the little kind of more like a harness. And they came up with ideas that really made them unique and stand out. There it is. Yeah, it did start on Instagram. I believe they sold the company. The next one over to the right is a company called the Coven, and that is a co-working space, again, Minneapolis and St. Paul. And they developed this business during the pandemic, got it going, did well, and then developed it into a franchise model that is being sold around the country. Utapils is a regional beer company. And again, what is unique in this is that they expanded their beer garden during the pandemic. And this is a company here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. I'm pretty sure it's St. Paul. And the winter here is not very nice. They had people standing outside to get into their beer garden in the winter for 90 minutes. You know, people were anxious, I guess, to drink their beer and anxious to socialize and get someplace. And they could get into the beer garden and have enough space so that that was a workable situation. They also bought some packaging equipment, and the expedited distribution and advertising, or increased their advertising during the pandemic, and they grew the business. The last one here is Skull Candy, and you probably know about them for making headphones and products like that. And they decided that everything out there was ugly or too utilitarian looking. So they came up with some visually appealing headphones and built a really good business doing that. I guess I was just going to mention this. When I started my original Facebook group, my membership group, one of the things that's fairly common is that you give your members a gift, or you give them some freebie, or you give them something that says, hey, welcome to my group. Here's my free ebook, or here's something. Well, because I interviewed everyone before we got started, they all told me that they had a lot of ideas and they wanted to organize their ideas. So I came up with this idea. Again, one idea. I had to get into the details of it, of course, and put together this book as a journal. It's got original artwork. It's got a quote on every page, and every page is lined, and there's artwork on every page. It's the same artwork. And what I decided after thinking about this and talking to people and putting it together as a product was that I was going to put the artwork on 5 full pages, and that was going to be a divider, and people then could fill in whatever that particular topic was going to be for that section of the journal. And it was a good focus. We put together a sales plan. I had emails going out to people for 4 weeks. We had 3 weeks, I believe it was 3 or 4 weeks of prize drawings where there were 3 winners and they each got a journal. And we did things to keep the momentum and get things going. I made calls to some people that I knew would be interested and encouraged them to buy in quantity. So with this, it was one idea, laid out the plan, executed the plan. On our first day, we hit bestseller status because it was focus. We had a plan, we had the one product, and we were single focused on putting together everything to make that successful as we could. And here's obviously different ways to find me. You can use my email. There's the QR code for that. You can go to my journal online. You can go to my Facebook group, which you well know. And there's another Facebook group because I had somebody also talk to me about the journal. And they said, what are you going to do to ROI the journal? How are you going to help people ROI it? And I must tell you, my reaction was, I don't want to do anything. It's a journal. Who cares? Why do I have to ROI it? Why do I have to have people get results? Can't people use the journal and just use it like they'd use any other journal? Well, of course, this person's in my brain trust. And you know, from previous sessions, I told you about the brain trust, that I then put together another group, and you're welcome to join it. That's the QR code on the right. And that is for people that bought the journal, or just like to journal, or just want to be positive. And it's a group on Facebook where people can go and encourage each other, can share stories or examples of what they're doing, can share their dreams, can show their ideas that they've come up with, get people that are going to say, hey, go for it, and have some positive encouragement. So that's how that ended up also as a particular, I guess, group. And I will go fairly frequently and post some things and ask people what they're doing and for any good stories or good experiences that they've had. That's what I have for you. So think about Martha Berry and how she took one idea, started telling stories to 3 children, built it from there to the largest contiguous college or university in the world with programs that are unique and that are sought after and have become models at other universities and colleges. I started off also telling you about my work in finance, and I was recruited. They convinced me that they needed me to start this operation for them. And I thought, well, why not? This would be fun. I can do this. I may or may not know exactly everything, and I still figured that I could do it. So that's what happened. It was me sitting on the floor with the phone book and the phone. Like I said earlier, I laid out my plan. I knew the kind of industries that would be most receptive to this type of finance. And the other thing I knew was that we are trained in this country to go one place when we need money. And that one place is the bank. So I started calling commercial lenders. And again, my one thing was calling commercial lenders. I met with 350 the first year. And I kept doing that. Anyway, I met 350 my first year. 95% of the business that first year was referred. I think that's probably unheard of. And I will never forget when the president called me and he said, Becky, we can't believe what you're doing at this office. We've never had a startup like this. This is a record. We are profitable in our first year. We repaid our startup financing the first year. And again, it became the model for any future expansion. And I encourage you to really take that one idea and put together the pieces to go forward with one idea, because you can start with one thing and make a difference. You know how to reach me. You had my other pieces right here. We're finishing up a little bit early for a change. How's that feel to not be quite so rushed and have everything packed in? Next time we are going to talk about, well, let's just go back and see what we are talking about. We're going to talk about mastering the money. We're going to talk a little bit about putting together your plan and also some things, some basics on financials, because that can just seem like a mystery and an overwhelming hill to climb for anyone that isn't from the finance side of the equation, maybe never had any accounting classes and is trying to figure this all out. So we're going to do that. And we're going to wrap up with talking about your team and how to build a good team. So we are wrapping up a little bit early. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Let me know any questions that you have. If you need anything, reach out and let me know, and post your questions in the group. Thanks much.